Hello and welcome to the webinar on DameWare into Utilities from SolarWinds. My name is Craig McDonald. I'm a product manager here at SolarWinds for the DameWare products. And today I'll be hosting the webinar along with my colleague Mark Allen, who is a sales engineer for DameWare. How you doing, Mark?
Good, Craig. How are you doing this morning?
Pretty good.
Good morning.
Before we get started, just a couple of notes. Today's content is interactive. We have an hour. We'll go through some slides as well as demo some of the things that we'll be talking about in the webinar today. Absolutely do not be afraid to ask questions, especially the deep questions. We want to make sure you walk away with a good understanding of the product and how it works. Don't wait until the end. Ask the question as it comes up. Also, today's session is being recorded. It's being recorded and will be posted on DameWare.com, and we'll also make the slides available on SlideShare.com. So again, don't be afraid to ask questions. We look forward to the interaction. So in terms of an agenda, we've done the introductions and kind of gone over, the format. The first thing we'll look at is where does your time go? Where can you optimize and be more efficient around how you spend your time with respect to the tools that you're using? In that same vein, we'll be showing you how DameWare into Utilities can help you save time. Then we'll look at some other tools for consideration, and then we'll kind of summarize at the end and answer any remaining questions that haven't been answered throughout the webinar. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. So where do you sysadmins find that you're losing your time? We know based on our experience with talking to our customers, Active Directory management is a potential time suck. You can use individual tools to perform each and every task. There's also additional third-party tools that you can use to do things like discovery in terms of users, systems, and domains. And then you have to actually add them to the Active Directory interface. In addition, there are some tools out there that don't support all of the objects that Active Directory actually supports, as well as the attributes of Active Directory. So, if you have attributes that you're wanting to add that are not supported by the tool that you're using, you have to go use yet another tool to do that. So how does Into Utilities help? Well, Into Utilities, first of all, has a powerful AD object driver. All AD objects and attributes such as OUs, containers, contacts, shares, things like that can be managed through the directly through the Into Utilities interface. In terms of employee assets, you can manage things like photos, also the employee ID and other important employee information that aren't always found in the native Microsoft tools. The ability to filter AD objects. You can retrieve, search, and filter on all AD objects and attributes, very simple through this single pane of glass. And that's one of the things that we'll be talking about and emphasizing a lot today is, all of these tools are available in some fashion or another, either through native Windows system tools or some other third-party tools. But one of the key benefits of DameWare into Utilities is that we provide all of these through a single pane of glass. So there's no need to toggle between multiple tools, and you have rich functionality within the tools from a single pane of glass with Into Utilities. So with that, Mark's going to do a quick demonstration for us in terms of the AD functionality in DameWare into Utilities.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. So as you can tell here, folks, we are looking at DameWare into Utilities. This is the Microsoft Management Console snap-in. So this is already, taking advantage of an interface that you're familiar with, something you've kind of already gotten used to as a Windows Systems Administrator. As you can tell, I really haven't done any configuration whatsoever, just kind of loaded DameWare into Utilities up on this box. It automatically went out and discovered the Active Directory domain that we are connected to, which is the lab.txt, as well as connected in with Microsoft Windows Network and looked at things like work groups and other one-off computers that were able to be discovered. So we are using native protocols to be able to do that discovery. If I want to take a quick look into our Active Directory, we can look at lab.txt here, and we can immediately see that we've got 121 computers located within this Active Directory environment. Clicking on it further is going to actually show all systems that are being reported from Active Directory, and then we will live query those systems. So the ones that you're seeing with the icons here, these simply imply that either we're not able to ping it, which is the most usual case, or it's got some sort of restriction, meaning the WMI queries are not going to take place on that box. So the most typical situation, though, is that the system itself is actually just currently offline. So this is actually a great way right off the bat to discover any orphan systems that were maybe once a part of your Active Directory infrastructure but have been offline. So coming into an example machine here, we have this Lab EXE 2007. This is one of our lab exchange systems. Let's say I wanted to maybe quickly take a look at the disk drive information for that system. I could just simply click here and you can immediately see information about the volumes that are populated on that system. If I go further on the C drive, I can get even more specific information about the file system, clusters, free space, all that sort of thing. And there's a lot of other really nice features that we can dive into as well. Event logs. Just with a simple double click, we're going to pull any and all event logs that are present on that system. Currently, we're looking at application. We're still querying it. As you can tell, a lot of times those event logs get pretty full. But we can go through other event logs as well, the hardware events, if any, Explorer, PowerShell, the security log, anything that's present on that Windows system. Groups are going to be available as well, so we can see what kind of local groups are present on the system. A lot of other good options, what processes are running currently, so this will take just a second to run. And as you can tell, folks, also we're loading each of these components into a separate tab, and since it is multi-threaded, we're still going to be, finishing our queries in other tabs while other pieces of the UI are loading up. So, coming over here, we can also dive even into the registry of the system. And we'll talk a little bit later about this, but we'd even be able to make mass registry changes to several systems all at once. So very, very powerful, as you can tell, for diving into a specific system. Going a little bit more into the Active Directory itself, if we want to look at the users and computers, we can see the OUs that are already populated here. Let's say maybe VMware View 5, this OU right here, this computers group. Maybe this is something that I'm frequently accessing. I can just right click and say add to quick OUs, and we now have that OU immediately available, almost like a favorites, kind of a bookmarking for our OU structure. Going in a little bit further, we'd be able to make modifications to Active Directory. You can even see that we could add some members to the group. I'm not currently logged in as an admin in this environment, but we have the ability to add members to groups, add Exchange public folders, create mailboxes. So you can fully manage your Active Directory infrastructure and your Exchange infrastructure right from the tool here. A few other nice features that we could maybe talk about for just a second are going to include the remote command ability. We will actually be able to, let's go into our remote command here. So what we'll attempt to do is install the service, and we can say yes if we want to install the service. What that allows us to do then is remotely query a system via the command line. So it's just as if you're sitting at the command line. Let's go ahead and say yes to this. And as you can tell, it takes just a second or so, but I can do, simple dir, host name. So it's just as if I'm actually sitting on that system from a command prompt perspective.
All right, thanks, Mark. So another area where sysadmins, find themselves losing time in terms of, system information with respect to machines under your responsibility. The ability to not only view that information, but to export that system information for reporting purposes. You need to hand it off to another sysadmin or another tech. You need to show your boss what's going on with respect to those systems. You can do, some of this via other third-party tools. The native Windows system tools generally don't provide any way to export that information in an easy way. Mark, what are some of the things that you've used in the past with respect to getting this information and exporting it?
Yeah, that information's usually available via some sort of native program, Microsoft Management Console snap-in. The problem is that a lot of times you'll either need to create your own from several different snap-ins to kind of have a saved view, and even then sometimes the interface is a little bit clunky and not very well integrated. or even have several different workstations that I'll use to maybe administer this part of the domain or that part of the domain, or maybe I'll use another workstation to be able to administer Exchange. Lots of different locations for these tools, all kind of in various different spots. Command line tools, a lot of times, unfortunately, administrators will just sometimes log directly into a server and just start hammering away at the command line there. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine. That's just kind of the way we've all gotten used to doing it. But there is a better way. I mean, you're going to be able to kind of, have a history of the commands that you've entered in with our product. You're going to be able to, then replicate it across several different servers and, use those command line tools all from one quick area where you're not really jumping in and out of different interfaces.
All right. Thanks, Mark. So, how is this better with DameWare? So capturing system information from remote machines. We just saw Mark go through quite a bit of that in terms of the information that you can pull directly from the NT Utilities console. Not only the ability to pull information on things like disk drives, event logs, groups, printers, whatever information that you're particularly interested in for that remote machine, you can pull directly from within NT Utilities. And as we saw, Mark demonstrate, it's all from the same console. It's all directly there. You don't have to log into each machine independently to get that. You can get it all from a single pane of glass. Now, once you have found the information that you're looking for, what do you do with it? Well, let's say you want to export that information into a spreadsheet or a CSV file that can be consumable by some third-party application like Crystal Reports. DameWare actually provides an exporter tool. The exporter tool is very useful and handy in the sense that you can filter whatever information on whatever machines that you're looking for, parse out the data that's only relevant to you, and then easily export that to either a spreadsheet or a CSV.
And we do have a question from Ronald Mundy saying, for Exchange management, can you manage security for public folders from DameWare? I believe the answer is yes to that, Craig.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and it's going to be present. Of course, in our lab environment here, Ronald, we actually don't have public folders set up on our Exchange server, but yes, so we couldn't demonstrate that for you now, but we do have the ability to manage that security for public folders.
Okay. Thanks. Mark, you want to walk us through, we've already seen a lot of examples of how you can pull system information, but also, where the exporter is.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently we've got a system up right now. And as you can tell, we do have these several different tabs. Our registry information, processes, groups, the event log information is all present for you. We even have the ability to come in and use our remote control. I think we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment here. That's actually a standalone product, but it's also integrated directly with NT Utilities. So we do sell the DameWare Mini remote control separately if that's all you're interested in, but most people tend to really go with the NT Utilities, which includes this mini remote control capability. It really goes above and beyond just simple RDP. So we'll jump into that in a little bit as well. Some of the other features that are available are going to be, pulling up general properties. And you guys can see how quickly this happened. I mean, I just double-clicked and the information's right there. We've got uptime right away, version information about the operating system, information specifically about the system, including CPU and physical memory. You even got your display statistics on here. It's just a lot of really good information very, very fast. I mean, it's really as quick and simple as just pulling down a system from the left-hand tree view over here and just doing a quick double click.
So we had another question in the queue. How can we get the user consent before connecting remotely to his computer? There are a number of different configuration options within the Mini Remote Control that give you a very granular degree of control over the interaction between the admin and the user on the remote system itself. You can specifically configure it so that the admin has to request permission, or vice versa, such that the admin doesn't need permission to connect to the end machine if that's how you want it configured. You can filter connections through things like group policies, so only allow connections if the connection is coming from a member of a specific group. You can also filter by things like IP address, so only allow connections from these explicit IP addresses. So you have a number of different ways that you can very granularly control how the interaction between the admin and the remote system works. So Mark, I think the next
Yeah.
thing we wanted to see was the exporter. Yeah.
You bet. So I was also just pulling up our services view here, as you can see. We'll kind of jump into that in just a moment. For the example of the exporter, let's go to File, Export, and you can choose a couple of computers here we already have listed off. Then over on the task list here, you can choose what kind of information you want populated. So we're going to see standard properties about the computer, the disk, the display. You can really get down granular and pick and choose what it is that you'd like to see. Really getting specific is going to be the WMI properties. So you can get very, very detailed information here. And then it's just really a matter of executing, the exporter task. And it'll go off and start capturing that information. This is all available as a CSV or an XML file to put into other applications or to use for other reports, such as Crystal reports.
Great. Thanks a lot, Mark. So we had another question. I have some servers in a DMZ and others on an internal network. What's the best secure way to handle this situation? The DMZ is firewalled from my workstation. I currently control those servers through the VMware console. So in terms of how Mini Remote Control connects, the connection is really optimized for managing servers on your internal network. So whether or not that's separated in a DMZ or a firewall, the idea is support cases and being able to remotely connect to machines within your network. If there are things that you have to traverse, like firewalls or other network configurations that make certain machines more inaccessible than others, MRC does have a feature called NAT traversal that provides you the ability to navigate around any firewall or any internet configurations that you have in between the admin and the remote machine itself.
Perfect. And the other question coming back from Rady, yes, with the configuration of that MRC, not only can you make sure to get the user's consent before remotely connecting, but they actually do need to click on a button once you configure it to do that, that would say, yes, absolutely allow this administrator, John, to connect to my machine at this time, or you can reject it.
Okay, we have another question. Are you working on a DameWare MRC iPad app? So there are a couple of things that we're looking at in terms of futures, and the typical SolarWinds answer there is we don't commit to timeframes or dates or anything like that. But certain things that we are looking at are currently the ability to connect to a remote machine is limited to Windows machines. Since we have acquired DameWare, I've talked to a lot of customers that also support Linux machines, Mac machines. So it is on the roadmap to be able to connect to operating systems other than Windows, specifically for Mac and Linux. Now, this question is specifically around, can I run MRC on an iPad? And we've also had other requests around that as well. Can I run MRC on a tablet or some other mobile device? It's definitely something we're thinking about, but not something that I can speak to very concretely at this point in time. Just understand it definitely is on our radar.
Great, thanks. And the next question is it possible to remote into an Apple device?
So I think I just answered that question. It's not currently possible right now, but it is something that we're actively working on. Okay. In terms of, hopefully the next release will be able to have some support for operating systems other than Windows in terms of the remote machine that you're connecting to. So moving on, what's another area where system administrators potentially lose their time? So just basic Windows management. In terms of the system tools that you use on the remote machine itself, typically requires the control panel or some other command line interface. You have to open this each and every time you access the system control tools, and this has to be done on each remote machine individually, which basically implies that you have to connect to that machine to access those tools. So how does this work, and how is this better with DameWare? Well, first, all of the native Windows system tools are accessible from a single place within the actual NT Utilities console, and Mark will show you how quick and easy that is in just a second. There's no need to access the machine remotely to log in and use these tools. All of these tools, again, are available from the console, so you're not having to log into an individual session with each machine to do this. Those tools are just readily accessible from the console itself. We also have the ability to browse a Windows network for non-AD environments, as well as the ability to easily manage domain controllers, servers, and workstations via machine name or IP address. So with that, Mark will show you kind of how it works in the console.
Yeah, so let's take a quick look using our remote control program, and I'm going to select another system here that I know another administrator is not currently on. It's going to be my own lab machine. So as you can tell, we've quickly populated this work group here. So I'm going to choose this M. Allen Lab 1. Again, you're going to see the same kind of information we've already seen previously for the Windows management. Some of the other aspects we didn't get into are, setting the Windows task scheduler, sending a net message, and we didn't really get to talk too much about it as well, but you also do have the ability to fully manage the services that are on that remote system. So currently this is a stop service. I could come in here, set it to automatic, disabled, start it up, change the account that it's being logged in with. That sort of thing. You can even right-click and install a service, or you can specifically say, yeah, I want to install this NT utility service or the DameWare mini remote control service. So, speaking of remote control, let's expand this here. We'll bring up mini remote control. As you can tell, it pre-populates everything for me. I just need to provide credentials. And it's going to come up and say that the mini remote control service is not currently installed. Would we like to install it now? We'll go ahead and say OK to that. And again, no special setup was ever really done on this. Very, very quick to set up. Of course, the first time you come in, it is going to take just a moment to load that service up. So we'll go ahead and send a Control-Alt-Delete. And it looks like we had previously had Internet Explorer loaded up on this remote system. So we're currently viewing this this other workstation over here right now. And as you can tell, one of the things that we're seeing is notification on that remote system. So a user would actually see this remote notification. It would show information about my user ID, who's logged in, and what system I'm logging in from. So a lot of really nice options that are available within the mini remote control. We also have the ability to stealthily watch remote systems. So once you set up this agent and setting up a couple of the options within it, you can remotely connect with no user interaction whatsoever to the remote system. This includes read-only view. This would even allow for several different administrators to view a server at one time, with one of those administrators having keyboard and mouse control, so that several admins could be working on the same system at the same time, kind of putting their minds together about a current problem that's going on.
That's actually a good point, Mark, because there's a lot of remote control solutions out there that explicitly require interaction between both the remote user as well as the admin. And for some use cases, that's nice and that's desired. The real benefit of MRC is that, as we talked about earlier, you have very granular control over how that interaction behaves. So, if your organization and your use cases require that you have to have approval from the end user, we support that use case. But there's also use cases around wanting to log into a machine unattended, or log into an unattended machine, or log into the machine such that the end user doesn't know that you're logging into the machine. DameWare supports that as well. There was another question, is data encrypted between machines? Yes, it is. There is a detailed write-up on how encryption works with the DameWare products that we can point you to after the webinar. So one of the other things that we wanted to show was, just the accessibility of these native Windows system tools. So all of you are very familiar with these, and as we mentioned earlier, these are tools that a sysadmin is going to use pretty much on a daily basis. But the real benefit of NT Utilities is that all of these tools are directly accessible from a single place, single pane of glass from the console itself.
So this is going to allow you to launch those other MMCs that maybe are already installed. You can customize any ones that you have. Maybe you have a net backup MMC or some specific view that you're already familiar with and that you've worked with before that's a saved MSC that you'd like to see. So you can save those here and just launch them directly from the NT Utilities tool.
Okay, so another area where sysadmins lose their time is remote access, and Mark already touched upon some of this, but we'll take a little bit deeper dive into the mini remote control applications. But what are some of the things that you have to do in terms of remotely accessing machines? Adding systems, servers, domains, and nodes manually can take time. Logging into remote machines individually can take time. For things like editing or modifying registry settings, you need to implement certain logon policies or force encryption. You need to actually look at the processes, kill or restart applications, or just general support scenarios. You need to call the end user to discuss or explain a problem. You need to take a screenshot and share that with another tech, or use that screenshot to document with your ticketing system what the support issue was, or document what a specific configuration is. Another thing you may have to deal with in terms of a remote control session is you have to deal with multiple monitor scenarios or screen resolution issues. Not all remote control applications handle these situations gratefully, and certainly not all of them provide the functionality that you're going to get with mini remote control. What does the conventional method look like, especially around this use case of trying to take a screenshot? Well, most users are familiar with RDP. You can RDP into a session. You can access the information you need, take a screenshot, paste it into Paint, save it off, and then add the file to your ticketing system or wherever you need to export that file. One key thing to point out here is, in the use case where you're using RDP is not an interactive session. Once you're logged in via RDP, that remote user is effectively locked out. This is not the case with mini remote control. One of the key benefits of mini remote control is it's as if you were standing over that user's shoulders. It's as if you were actually there with them. And through the toolbar, which Mark will do a little bit deeper dive on, provides you with a lot of capabilities and functionality to enhance that interactive experience. Albeit it's virtual, the tools we provide you make it super easy to manage that remote session as if you were there with the user. So what are some of the key benefits of DameWare Mini Remote Control? Well, it's included in the NT Utilities package. Mark mentioned earlier we sell it separately, but if you buy NT Utilities, MRC is automatically included with that. And as I mentioned, it allows taking complete control of a remote machine without having to log in every time. And most of the remote administration tasks that you need to be able to do can be performed from one single interface. So some other features that can save you time around, a remote control session. And after this, I'll get Mark to kind of show you some of these. We mentioned the screenshot taking capabilities. One of the other things that we added in the most recent release is the ability to chat. So you may need to chat with an end user or remote user before you actually initiate the remote control session to get a better understanding of what the problem is. You may need to chat because phone is not an option that's available to you. Once you're logged into the mini remote control session, you may need to continue that chat. So all of this is supported with the latest release of mini remote control and NT Utilities. One other key benefit of mini remote control is the ability to do interactive smart card login and remote smart card authentication. DameWare worked directly with the U.S. Armed Forces to implement smart card login support for mini remote control, as they are one of our big customers. With that, Mark, do you want to show some of the other features in mini remote control that we've talked about?
Absolutely, Craig.
So while Mark's setting that up, one of the questions is any user or computer audit functions last login as an example. There is an access log within mini remote control so that you have some audit trail of the connections that happen.
So the demonstration server that we're currently looking at here for MRC actually does have the older release on there. So we don't have that currently showing for the chat or the screenshot capability, but we did install two additional buttons that are located right around here that would allow you to do the chat feature. And it would pop up a simple window just displayed right here. And the screenshot utility allows you to save it directly as a file or copy it to your clipboard as well.
That's right. And as with any SolarWinds product, if you guys want to try out these features yourself, you can download for free and try for an evaluation period, full functionality version of the product.
And one other option that we do have, a nice feature for DameWare Mini Remote Control, is the simple file transfer. A lot of times getting a diagnosis file, a diagnostics file from the end machine back to your workstation where you can then work with and manipulate it. Sometimes that can be a little difficult. Sometimes there are email constraints around file sizes that can be sent, or maybe you don't have an FTP server readily available, or it's too difficult to explain. Our simple file transfer feature allows you to have essentially a window that you can drag and drop files into that would allow instantaneous file transfer from your workstation to the endpoint that you're logging into.
All right, so the choice is yours. This is kind of a silly picture here, but the idea is, the conventional method is sometimes a backwards way of doing things, sometimes upside down. But DameWare, through Into Utilities and Mini Remote Control, provides a very optimized, streamlined way of doing some very common system administration tasks that you find yourself doing on a daily basis. One of the questions in the queue right now is, how is the product licensed? DameWare Into Utilities as well as MRC, Mini Remote Control, are both licensed the same way. It's what we call seat-based licensing. So you basically buy a license for each user that's using the software. So if you have 5 admins that need to use the software, you'd buy basically a 5-seat license. Any number of seats are available. You're not restricted to tier ranges as you are with other SolarWinds products. So if you needed to buy a license for 11 administrators or 17 administrators, you can buy a license just like that. You can also upgrade accordingly, and as you upgrade, you will see a volume discount with increased tiers. So in terms of how users are allowed to use that software once they've purchased a seat, we provide a pretty good deal of flexibility in terms of how each individual user can install the software. Each individual user is entitled to 3 installations. So if I bought a 5-seat for Into Utilities, I would be allowed a total of 15 installations of the software. That's 3 per user. So that's how the product is licensed.
We had another question. Do we need to change the Windows firewall rules or do some configuration in advance before connecting the machines remotely via DameWare? No, you don't, at least not with the Windows default firewall rules. What you saw with my demonstration of connecting into a remote desktop installation is, default behavior. So it automatically goes, and provided that you have a good administrator credential to log into that box, correct rights to log into it and view, install the MRC driver, we'll take care of all that for you. There's no additional configuration needed.
So we had another question. Does this product integrate well with network switching and routing monitoring systems? Absolutely. There's no reason why this shouldn't work with your existing infrastructure. And in addition, as I mentioned before, any special case network configurations, either behind a firewall or DMZ or even across the internet, we provide NAT traversal capabilities to mitigate some of those configurations to make it easier for you to connect to those machines. There was a question on being VMware compliant. You should have no issues connecting to virtual machines that are managed through VMware.
And another question, is there a way to pull a range of addresses, i.e. VPN connected users? Yeah, there is a way to quickly add a range of IP addresses that you would like to monitor, maybe something that is not specifically discoverable via the Windows network or via AD. So if you have, specific systems that the IP address range of, yeah, you can definitely add those in and they'll get added into your tree node view that we saw there on the left-hand side of the screen.
A few additional resources we call out on this next slide. We actually have a separate community forum for DameWare. SolarWinds acquired DameWare last December, and DameWare came with its own community site and its own very large user base. And we felt that community forum was actually very active and pretty rich in terms of its community contributions. So we wanted to keep that. There are no plans right now to move the community forums over to Thwack. So if you have any questions that you'd like to post to the DameWare community at large, you would do it on those forums. There's also an online support site at the URL listed on the slide that has not only a rich FAQ, but as well as a pretty rich knowledge base of common issues that DameWare customers have encountered in the past. And if you want more detailed information on NT utilities or mini remote control, just go to DameWare.com. And as I mentioned earlier, you can download and try either of those for free, fully functioning version of the product, and you try out some of the features that we've talked about on the webinar today.
We had another question. Can I group import a list of users? Yeah, you definitely can. So probably the use case would be for you to have maybe a CSV or an Excel or even just a simple, Notepad document full of users and their information. You can definitely import that into the tool and use that to mass add several, users into Active Directory all at once.
Okay. We had another question on licensing. It asked no restrictions on number of nodes. Yes, that's the case. So this is one of the key differences between the DameWare products and other remote control applications out there is that we license by the number of admins using the product. We do not license by the number of endpoints. So most remote control products out there license by the number of endpoints, which obviously the cost can grow, and you're constantly having to scale up as your environment grows. We like to think of this as a good competitive differentiator for us, and that you only need to buy seats for the number of admins using it, and obviously that number is going to grow much more slowly than the number of endpoints that you're actually tasked with supporting.
Yes, you can connect to users that log in through a VPN connection, provided you have a path back to that endpoint and proper ports open for remote desktop connection. Default would be 3389 or the MRC port.
Okay, so just a couple of points on SolarWinds for those of you not familiar. We're easy to find at SolarWinds.com. On SolarWinds.com, you can find information on all of the other IT management products we sell that can help make your life easier. Everything that we sell is easy to buy, easy to install, and easy to use. So, DameWare specifically, these are not server-based products. You're installing them on your desktop or your PC or your laptop. These are super easy to get up and running, literally in a matter of minutes. Definitely no need for professional services. And as is the case with any SolarWinds product, we pride ourselves on being easy to use. We will continue to invest in that area with each release of the products moving forward. The idea being we want to make these as easy to use as possible for you so that you're using the tool to make your life easier in terms of your responsibilities and that you don't have a learning curve for the tool itself. One of the last questions, if you have a tier 1 and tier 2 support group, can you restrict accessibilities to lower tier and give higher tier more rights? That's a great question. So in terms of roles or access rights, the way that this is managed is actually through the operating system on the remote machine. So using mini remote control, you have to actually log in with an account. In terms of how you control access to things like client agent settings or the ability to deploy agents, things like that, those are going to be controlled by the access rights in the operating system itself. So if you are logging in with an account that has administrator rights, then you will be able to access the client or the agent settings and change things like whether or not you have to accept an access request, whether or not you want the screen blanked, all of those things that we talked about earlier. If you want to restrict that access in terms of the admin that's logging into a machine, then those admins would log in with a non-privileged, non-administrator account, and that's how we manage that. So with that, I think we've answered most of the questions. Hopefully this gave you guys a good idea of some of the functionality in NT utilities as well as mini remote control. Both of these products are very inexpensive, starting out at a single seat license for mini remote control at $99, and for NT Utilities, a single seat starts at $350. And that is typical SolarWinds pricing, in the sense that the license fee includes the first year of maintenance, and then as long as you renew maintenance, you're always entitled to upgrades and support. So with that, we'll wrap things up. Thank you for joining today.